Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am your host for today, Taylor Rockwell. No Daryl Grove with me. Instead, I'm going to be speaking to Adam Snavely of The Athletic. Adam writes the lovely and wonderful panic rankings. Specifically, right now, it's the Premier League panic rankings, ranked from 1 to 20. It's the teams who are most panicked to least panicked, starting with the least panicked, I should say. But we get into a lot of other topics, ranging from the ideal landing spot for Mesut Ozil to some of the less heralded teams that Adam enjoys watching and writing about, how happy he is to have Peter Crouch back in the Premier League, the players with the best Twitter accounts, many, many topics in there. We discuss Miguel Almiron and his move to Newcastle. Adam has lots of thoughts and lots of insight. The same goes for his thoughts on, say, Arsenal, on Chelsea, United, lots of other teams in the Premier League because he watches them all and writes about them all. So it's a fun conversation. We start out talking about the article, then we get into some of the teams. I hope you enjoy it. There's also some trash talking because that's kind of what always happens when Adam and I are in the same room. But before we get to the interview, we've had lots of tweets today asking about Daryl. He did have his surgery earlier today. From what I've heard, it went very well. He is in recovery now. We'll know more tomorrow, so I feel more comfortable waiting until tomorrow to give you a full update. But I can tell you that it went well. And I can also say thank you to the many, many people out there who have reached out or sent their positivity or their prayers or their love or their admiration or affection or whatever else. It's been really genuinely amazing to see how much love is out there for Daryl Grove. I know there's a lot of it here in this office with just me sitting here, but it's good to know that it's also out there around the world as well. So thank you to everybody again. I know Daryl appreciates it. It means a lot to him, and obviously it means a lot to me as well. But that's it for the serious part of today's episode. So instead, let's get to some panic and some pressure in the Premier League with Adam Snavely of The Athletic. With me now on the line, I've got The Athletic's Adam Snavely, or to give him his proper title, the Baron Lord Snavison, I believe it is.
Yeah, I think that's what we agreed upon.
Yeah, and you loved it. I know that. You were super pumped about it, so I figured I'd keep it going today. So Adam / Baron Lord Snavison, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today about the panic rankings.
Thank you for having me, Taylor. It's always a pleasure to speak to my underlings.
That sounds about right. I'll take that. When you're a Baron Lord, I don't know what I am, and my beard is a little bit unkempt, so I guess I look a little bit serf-like, similar to David Brooks. Was it?
Oh yeah, David Brooks. Oh man, that picture.
that was outstanding. I want to talk about that in a little bit, but first I wanted to talk about. I just alluded to it a minute ago, but the panic rankings in general, it's a recurring article that you write for The Athletic. I think it started with the World Cup. Now you're doing it with the Premier League. But can you talk a little bit about how you first came up with the idea for the panic rankings and what they exactly are?
Right. So the panic rankings, they did begin in the summer with the World Cup. And originally the idea was pitched to me as some type of deal, some type of send-up of a power ranking, where you have a writer or team of writers that comes in. They look at what has just happened in the last week or two in a particular sports league, and then they say, all right, here's the best teams from best to worst, and a little blurb about them. And George and Brooks kind of came to me and they said, hey, we kind of want to do like a send-up of a power ranking. How would we do that? Like if we did something like a panic ranking where we would do, you have these teams and you have this idea that they're just getting progressively just more worried as time and competition goes on, and it descends into complete histrionics. And they said, do you think you could do that? And I said, well, yes, I do think I could do that because that's a lot of what I have been doing. And I, in the one other time that I have called into the Total Soccer Show and been a distinguished guest, I talked a little bit about how I originally got picked up and what I was doing before I wrote for The Athletic. And I had a little like Monday morning news column for Stars and Stripes FC over at SB Nation that I had called the Toxic Talk, where I basically just took whatever American soccer topic I wanted to, and I kind of played this character that was just constantly pissed off about something, and I wrote that column, and then I then I put it in some links and all this stuff. And it was fun, and it was interesting, and it more than anything else, it was different. It was something that not a whole lot of other people were doing. I kind of got the idea, partially stole the idea from some stuff that guys at Dirty South Soccer were doing, put my own little spin on it, and that was that. So George and Brooks came to me with the idea for the panic rankings, and I said, yeah, I can do that. And it has progressed and escalated, and we find ourselves 25 weeks into the Premier League season now, after the World Cup finished, and we had the entire World Cup edition to the Power Rankings. That was something that George said, "Hey, we're adding Premier League writers. Mm-hmm. We should keep the gravy train rolling with the panic rankings. We should do those for the Premier League." And I said, "All right, yeah, you're telling me to continue doing a job, so I will continue to do the job." And that's kind of how the Premier League panic rankings got rolling. And there's been the World Cup edition. I did a special edition for the MLS playoffs. I don't know exactly what the future entails for them. I think I might try to take a little bit of a break from them and pump out something fresh for the summer, maybe for the Gold Cup, just so people don't get tired of them. But yeah, that's the panic ranking.
All right.
In a little nutshell.
And in the week 25 one, the most recent one, I think in that one alone, there were specific, I think you had a description of a magical ritual, a nihilistic pool party featuring Roy Hodgson and I believe Chris Hughton. And then you had references to like multiple songs. There was a Honey Badger reference, a Gareth Keenan reference, professional wrestling, the Super Bowl. I'm wondering, like and I do want to get into some of the teams themselves and some of your thoughts on the Premier League teams, but I wanted to ask you first, like there's a lot going on in there. So how do you kind of come up with it? Is it just sort of specific moments that stand out from the weekend? Do you try to kind of catch highlights or watch as much as you can and then boil it down to specific moments? Or is it just about kind of cramming in random pop culture things that are of particular interest to you?
It really just depends. I have, for all different teams, for all different people, I have all these different ideas that I can grab. And I start the process. So the panic rankings are bi-weekly, so that it's kind of I don't know, again, to prevent people from getting too fatigued with them. And like you said, it is a lot. It's a lot that I cram into those things. So I start with, I just try to watch as much as possible. So I'm watching a couple of full games every weekend, plus I watch I live in America, so I get the benefit of NBC posting the extended highlights of every single game. So I watch the highlights of every game, like every single week for the Premier League. So just so I know always what's going on. And then obviously I'm also just in general in touch with the little online soccer community. And so I keep abreast of the different things that are happening, different interesting news stories that are happening off the field. And so I have all of that and taking all that into consideration. Then I have my favorite characters and figures from the teams and the players. And so you have, at the beginning of the season, I did a couple of things. For example, specifically, if you're like, oh, well, how do you just go in and randomly make a joke about, I don't know, Watford? Well, specifically, if I'm looking back at the beginning of the season at Watford, Troy Deeney had this phenomenal quote where he was just, after they had played Crystal Palace, he basically came out and said, he's like, oh yeah, we totally took turns kicking the crap out of Wilfred Zaha because if one of us does it, then we're going to get red carded. But if we all take turns, we can just kick him to our heart's delight and we'll win. And that's what happened. And so I kind of then had this, a couple of weeks I had Troy Deeney as this kind of this big kind of brutish kind of boxer thing. It has been a goal of mine and a goal that has so far succeeded, that every single graph for Cardiff City has been about Neil Warnock, and it's actually a longer fiction piece that can all be put together. I don't know if anybody has caught that yet, but every single one can actually be put together into a cohesive timeline. I'm taking a lot. I'm taking a lot from pop culture. I am taking a lot from my own background, some poetry stuff, and some English stuff, because I was an English person in college. So there was at least one week where I remixed a T.S. Eliot poem to be about, I believe that was about Manchester United, actually. I'm pretty sure that was the one. Yeah, so there's a lot, and there's a lot that goes into it, and the main goal of it at the end of it is to be funny. Mm-hmm. It's a humor column, and it's kind of satirical. It's border on the line of being satirical or not, because I think for something to actually be satire, there's some sort of message that needs to be conveyed, and I don't know that the Panic Rankings always convey that message. But I like to keep people guessing as far as when they're reading it and they're having a good time and laughing, just how much analysis and commentary on a team I'm actually giving by where I put them and what I say about them. For example, there was this latest edition that you referenced earlier. I put as the least worried, I put Manchester United down at number 20, and then way down the list, they have been up closer to the top most weeks, but way down the list this time, around like 10th or something like that, I had Manchester City and Liverpool. And somebody in the comments, I don't know if they were being sarcastic or not, I didn't check back to see if they responded to me, was just talking about like, oh yeah, this Liverpool side that's, 3 points ahead of the reigning champions in a year that everybody thought that Manchester City was going to run away with it, are way down the list, and Manchester United are the ones that aren't worried. And I'm kind of like, yeah, exactly. Liverpool fans, I think, the Liverpool fans that I've talked to, I think are kind of terrified.
Yep.
And they think that this is going to just, for the lack of a better word, they think that this is going to slip. They have seen this story before, and they're afraid that the script has already been written. As opposed to Manchester United fans, which, if I'm not mistaken, you are counted amongst those.
I am counted amongst those. Wow. That was, I don't know if that was meant to be as harsh as it was, but it was terrific. So thanks for that.
No, I don't sugarcoat as the scribe of the Panic Rankings. No,
of course.
With Manchester United, even in a less like Manchester United fans are going to be Manchester United fans kind of way, which there are a lot of Manchester United fans that are. Not saying that you are, Taylor, but I've known some in my day. Uh-huh. I've seen some Manchester United fans.
Yeah.
But even outside of that kind of stereotype, you have the fact that this is kind of a free season at this point for Manchester United. It
absolutely is.
It's just this point where, all right, you now have Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who's the head coach, and they've done great under him. And anything that they get out of this season after what they went through with Jose and, how long they kind of sat mired in sixth place is absolute gravy. If they can get in the Champions League, great. If they can win an FA Cup, wonderful. And if they can't do those things, well, we had an interim coach, and we had a bad false start on the season. But now we have a club where the really, really expensive players that we're paying to play are actually seem to be happy to play and are doing well. And so I think that at this point in the season, Manchester United fans don't have a ton to worry about. And Manchester United as a club is just in a much freer place than they once were, as opposed to some of the clubs at the top. So all of that to say, the Panic Rankings are very much humor first, but I do like to keep people guessing as to how much kind of analysis and other things I'm putting into it.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I think it's such a smart concept, because panic is panic. It can happen at any given moment. And so it's like, to your point, if you're Liverpool and you're sort of chasing and then suddenly you're on top, that can be simultaneously like great and you're on a great run of form. But it can also be very nervous, and that's why like panic works better than power or like ranking of success or anything like that. But I did then wonder, like, are there teams that you find are more difficult than others to write about? Are there ones that you particularly look forward to writing about or enjoy sort of coming up with content for? And are there others that are maybe slightly more challenging?
I think that there are teams that just have it's just kind of harder to write things about them in general. For example, a team like Brighton, pretty decent team.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're never going to be a great team, but they're not like an awful team either. And they don't have a ton of like just standout personalities or figures or people outside of like, you can make fun of Glenn Murray for being Ancient of Days, but after that it's kind of, so you really have to work for some of them. I think one of the ones that I've actually had trouble with trying, not even that I've had trouble writing stuff for them, because I think there's plenty of stuff and figures that I can write about. A team that I always have trouble placing is Crystal Palace.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm convinced that Crystal Palace is not a bad team, but they keep doing things to try to make me wrong. I watch them and I continue to see them and I think to myself every time I see them play that there's a good team here. There's a solid mid-table team and not a relegation scrapper here. And somehow they just keep dropping results that they shouldn't drop. They'll go and they'll play Liverpool in a super tight game, or they'll tie Manchester United, or they'll do like that, and then they'll, I don't know, lose to Cardiff. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. And so I always have to take a lot of stock of what has happened and transpired and where they're at in the table, and then who they've actually played and how they have inevitably drawn or lost a game that goes into it. I kind of have trouble placing them a lot of the time.
Well, so aside from maybe like trying to deliberately frustrating you, do you have ideas as to what the cause of that inconsistency is? My guess would be that it's just that like against the bigger teams they're sitting deep and then countering, and against the smaller teams they have, or other smaller teams, they have more of the possession. But is that it, or is it just that like Troy Deeney has told everyone to kick Wilfried Zaha and that seems to be working effectively?
I do think that there was a little bit, especially at the beginning of the season. Crystal Palace, figuring out specifically the key to Crystal Palace's attack was
Mm-hmm.
locking down Zaha.
Yeah.
Since then, Andros Townsend has been a little bit better and a little bit more consistent. I think starting around like the later fall, he started just kind of picking it up in terms of him chipping in and contributing in the attack. They've also just brought in Michy Batshuayi, which as a Dortmund fan,
Mm-hmm.
I am acquainted with, and I do think that Crystal Palace suffers a bit from inconsistency and just the people. If you look at their roster, it's almost this who's who of like hot Premier League signings of yore. Like Zaha, Andre Ayew is on the team,
Yep.
Christian Benteke, and even now with Batshuayi, all the Andros Townsend. It's all these people that were kind of like, this is the next big star. Like this is the person that will be it. And then those people didn't quite pan out, or not at least not to the measure that everybody wanted them
Mm-hmm.
to or expected of them. And I think that there is something to say that, a lot of these players have been inconsistent for their entire Premier League careers. I don't think that they're necessarily have changed all that much at Crystal Palace. I do think that Roy Hodgson is a great manager, especially for these kind of mid-table teams,
Mm-hmm.
and can get the best out of those type of players. So maybe that's why I see more in Crystal Palace than I think they often show me. But I think that there's definitely an inconsistency to the squad.
Hey everybody, this is Taylor cutting in from my conversation with Adam and his thoughts on panic and pressure to tell you about today's sponsor. If you're panicking about not fully understanding the stock market, as I do on a regular basis, or understanding how to invest and how to make it all work, then our sponsor for today has got you covered, because it's Robinhood. Robinhood is an investing app that lets you buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos all commission-free. While some brokerages may charge $10 for every trade, I think Mike Ashley's brokerage charges $4,000 for every trade, and then they don't actually let you make the trade. Robinhood does not do that. They don't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all your profits. There's no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level if you want to just figure out how it works. Small little investment, then you can keep it going and figure out what works, what doesn't. I would say don't buy Toys R Us or Blockbuster stock. That's just me. But if you want to get involved, Robinhood is giving listeners of the Total Soccer Show a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at soccer.robinhood.com. Once again, that's soccer.robinhood.com to get a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Thank you very much to Robinhood for sponsoring this episode and many other episodes of the Total Soccer Show. They're a lovely sponsor. We're very happy to have them. We're also very happy to have Adam Snavely joining us to talk panic rankings and the Premier League. So let's get back to Adam. Sticking in London, your description of Tottenham in their current position was somehow both optimistic and pessimistic, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So where do you think they end up in all this? Not necessarily in the power rankings, but how do you think their season plays out from what you've seen? And are you surprised that they're apparently back in the title race?
I'm not surprised that they're apparently back in the title race, and I also won't be surprised when put the pressure on, as they once said themselves, because Tottenham is a good squad, and Pochettino is a great manager, and you have a lot of great players, even with people injured, as you know their attack is very, very sparse right now. It's a luxury for a team when you have no Harry Kane, no Dele Alli, you can still say, well, at least now we still have Heung-min Son and Christian Eriksen, we can throw those people out in the field. But I still think that Tottenham is going to end up third place. I don't see them catching Manchester City or Liverpool. I don't see them pulling out the results against the clubs that they need to actually get results against to climb the table. In order to do that, case in point, dropping that 1-0 result to Manchester United is just a couple weeks ago. That's massive. If you're encountering a team that just had a regime change, so there is a mix-up of the top where you might have the opposing players are a bit energized, but also they might not be super familiar or used to new systems of play that are coming in. So you really have a chance there. We know we're playing, a decent team, an inconsistent team with Manchester United. We need to get a result there if we want to say we are going to actually challenge for the Premier League title. And they don't. They drop those points, which is huge. I just don't see them pulling out the result they need to get there. I think they'll end up in third place. Right now, if I had to guess, I think the season ends Manchester City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Manchester United. That's how I see it going. I feel like Arsenal has enough of a backwards trajectory, and Manchester United has shown enough that I think that they'll probably overtake them, if not necessarily catching up to third place, but I think they'll definitely snag that fourth spot. And Tottenham kind of rests easy in that third place.
You've led me into another category I wanted to get to, but first, just a matter of terminology. So if a team is the most panicked, then that would mean they're number 1. The least panicked would be number 20. But would that put them the top of the rankings or the bottom of the rankings if they're the most panicked team?
The ranking. I mean, it kind of semantics and all that. The ranking, as it is physically laid out on the paper, is the literal top. The first team you come to is number 20, the least panicked.
Okay.
And it goes all the way down to number 1, which is the most panicked.
Okay.
So right now you have the least panicked Manchester United gleefully seeing off Marouane Fellaini on his trip to China. And the most panicked you have Fulham and Claudio Ranieri conducting a possible satanic ritual on the pitch at Craven Cottage.
That all checks out, obviously, and logically.
Yeah.
But of the maybe like the top 6 to 8 teams or so, who do you think finishes bottom of the rankings at the end of the season? Who do you think is most panicked or most consistently panicked? And why is it one of Chelsea, Arsenal, or Everton?
It might not be Everton, because based on this lineup they just put out to face Manchester City with no Gylfi Sigurdsson and no Richarlison, it already tells me that they might have given up on this season. Arsenal is possible. You have, I mean, okay. First of all, Arsenal is great to write about, because if I'm ever at a loss for anything that I need to write about for Arsenal, I just pop on Arsenal Fan TV, go watch some old videos, get inspired, and their fan base is just there's something about them that is like really, really easy and fun to make fun of. It might be an anger at me for making fun of them that really just attracts me to it, but or it might just be the sheer amount of Arsenal fans that are just in general like around. Like, yeah, you know, there's a lot of Arsenal fans. There's a lot of Arsenal fan podcasts. Shout out Hooligans. I don't. There's just a really, really healthy I don't know, group of people there that I can make fun of. I think that eventually it will come down to whatever race, depending on if it's relegation or championship, whatever race really, really comes down to like the latest date. So if you have a situation where the teams that are relegated are like, we're pretty for sure getting relegated, like with still 3 games left in the season, whereas Liverpool and Man City goes on to the last game, probably going to be Liverpool if Liverpool loses. Like that's some Shakespearean level tragedy that they're experiencing there. On the other hand, if, you know, a couple top teams just tank and somebody just runs away with a title, maybe that transfers down further down in the league. It kind of just depends on what the league gives me.
That makes sense. But so I'm wondering then, what do you think is, say for Arsenal, for example, a team that like you're obviously keeping an eye on, you're watching Arsenal Fan TV, you get a lot of opinions on that one, because I know that while you're doing all this, you're still staying informed and you still have your own opinions as a soccer fan and pundit and analyst or whatever else. So I'm wondering, what do you think has gone wrong for Arsenal, or what do you think the issue is there currently?
I think that, I don't even know if it's so much that something has gone wrong for Arsenal. It's literally, I think, the thing that it always has been, which is that, you know, Unai Emery needs time and a little bit more experience and players gelling, and certain players that are young that can get more experience and continue to grow in the league. I think Arsenal isn't in crisis right now, but I think that Arsenal fans tend to make Arsenal always in crisis. And, you know, at the beginning of this whole thing, when Unai Emery was hired and Arsene Wenger finally left, rest in peace, Wenger out signs, you had a lot of very well-meaning and measured takes that said, you know, we need to give Unai Emery a chance here. We need to give him at least like a couple years. He needs a couple of transfer windows to really get the squad back to where it was. And there was some, I think there might have been some run that was just, it was a little bit more, it was unexpected how well that they did, possibly against some teams like Liverpool. And then it digressed a little bit more, and all of a sudden Arsenal are in 6th place and Tottenham are beating them and all of this stuff. And I don't think that anything has particularly gone wrong. I just think, you know, yeah, like you have to figure some stuff out. Like, you came into the season and you still haven't figured out where you want to play Mesut Ozil or if you want to play him at all. Like, that's a big question, especially for the people that are making the most money on your roster. And, you know, do you play Henrik Mkhitaryan or is he just going to go away forever? Is he injured? What happened to Henrik Mkhitaryan? I just lost complete sight of him.
I mean, yeah, I think unless you're an Arsenal fan, maybe that's kind of par for the course. But I feel like, yeah, the other issue there you hit on that I feel like is probably pretty big that tends to get skipped over is Mesut Ozil. And I know, and not to say like he gets talked about plenty. It's Mesut Ozil. He makes a lot of money. Everyone's always concerned about him. But I feel like within the conversation of Arsenal, it tends to be, is Emery figuring out? Is the goalkeeper issue settled? What's going on with the defense? Why haven't they signed anybody? Is Granit Xhaka like the solution? And how do you get Lacazette and Aubameyang together? And it seems like some of those issues have been solved, but a lot of them it feels like keep getting addressed or keep coming back up. And so like Ozil almost is a like for me, example, not an Arsenal fan, it's kind of an afterthought because I'm looking at the players on the field and what Emery is doing with them, and Ozil isn't even one of those. So you're right, like that's a weird reflection of the season. But for me, it's also like another like reason why I enjoy the panic rankings is because they give me an idea of like why some teams are successful and some teams aren't, because I'm realizing the two things so far are basically consistency, that if you keep kind of performing, it makes it harder for you, Adam, to write the panic rankings because it's kind of the same thing every single time, but that means you're doing well. But it also seems like it's the ability to solve problems as they come, because if you're just like, oh, we'll get to Mesut Ozil eventually, and that's week 1, here we are at week 25, and it still feels like, well, we'll get to Mesut Ozil at some point. And if you don't kind of confront those issues, then yeah, you end up kind of doomed to make the same mistakes.
Right. And with Mesut Ozil, obviously, you run into the kind of the problem where, in terms of like modern soccer and the way that a lot of tactics works, a lot of people set up their teams, Mesut Ozil kind of plays a little bit of an antiquated position. You know, there's not that many just pure number 10s roaming around in the middle of the field anymore. So you have to figure that out, and you have to be like, all right, well, if we're going to play him, how do we put him in that lineup, or are we not going to put him in the lineup at all? And if you're not going to play him at all, if you're not going to accommodate him, then how are you not going to sell him? Because he is making so much money, and you know, at this point in time, still could fetch a very high price if somebody were to come along and really want him. So I don't know. I think that there is definitely like a certain amount of frustration with Arsenal fans that there are still so many unanswered questions. But it's part of the process. Like you got a guy who came in to take over a legendary club with a lot of offensive assets that didn't all make sense together, and he had to try to make something of that.
Why do you? Not that I would disagree, because I think I find myself agreeing. But why do you think that creative pure number 10 has become an antiquated position?
Because you kind of have had specifically in the last couple of years, you've had all this talk and a lot of, I guess, hand wringing about how possession doesn't matter anymore. It's not about possession. It's not about how much possession you have. It's what you do with your possession, and which feels very different from the conversation 10 years ago when Spain ruled the world, and possession was everything, and they could run out a formation with they literally played a 4-6-0 in the World Cup in 2010, and they won it. And that was it. Like, you could do that now with teams and how they're set up, and you expect your central midfielder, even if that's the person that's going to be playing up, to still be involved somewhat more in your transition and your defensive play and your counter press. And so, I mean, the classic number 10, like the Riquelme kind of player, just doesn't really do that anymore. Or if you do have that player, a lot of the times that player has been moved out to the wing, where the creative force of your team kind of just it becomes the winger as opposed to the number 10. hence where Ronaldinho's Barcelona years, his highlights, you just see him constantly in the middle of the field. Mm-hmm. You transition to Leo Messi's Barcelona years, where so much of his career and where he has been most productive has been at the wing. So the death of the 10, I don't think it's necessarily the death of the 10. I just think that it's very rare to see coaches accommodating that player anymore, or really figuring them out in a way that makes the rest of their lineup make sense. I think you're more likely to have people come in like Maurizio Sarri, who says, well, we can just put a really, really deep-lying kind of passing player in the back and then have two people in front of him who are going to function as dual number 8s. And really, when they're pushing up, they're still eating up ground. And we can, we'll try to create from the wings and that sort of thing.
More from the Baron Lord Snavington in just a moment. If you're wondering, I think I gave him that title when we were all in Atlanta together because he had an incredibly regal-sounding waspy name, so I wanted to make it that much more waspy. That's why he's the Baron Lord. We'll get back to him in a second because I wanted to let you know about today's sponsor, Grip 6. Grip 6 is the only belt with no holes and no belt flap hanging out. It's low profile and ultra lightweight, which makes it incredibly comfortable. I am currently recording this with Man City having just defeated Everton 2-0 on Wednesday afternoon. That puts Man City top of the table on goal difference for now. But maybe if they wanted to stay there, they could get a Grip 6 belt. We know it holds in place all day once secure because it's got the badger teeth that keep it in place and keep it locked in tight. So maybe Man City could buy a Grip 6 belt, attach it to the top spot in the Premier League, and then stay there for the rest of the season. I'm not sure that's how it works. I think you probably have to win games and score goals and stuff, but it should be that the Grip 6 belt keeps you there. But if you're one of the other Premier League teams and maybe you want to lock in your spot wherever you are on the table, maybe you're 17th and you're afraid to fall further down, they've got a wide variety of straps and buckle styles, and each strap and buckle combination is easily interchangeable. So maybe you can make it suit your color scheme or your style, and then you can hold your place, not get relegated, maybe make Europe. Who knows? Grip 6 can help you get there, I think. I think that's how it works. They personally manufacture the belts in-house and even design their own manufacturing tools. I find that incredibly cool. But Total Soccer Show listeners may find it incredibly cool that they're giving you all a special bonus discount. Go to grip6.com/TSS. That's GRIP, the number 6.com/TSS, and they've got two different deals for you. You can get their classic pack, which is 3 buckles and 3 straps, for 33% off, or 20% off any individual belt or buckle strap combination. So go to grip6.com/TSS to figure out how to get those discounts, how to get those belts, how to secure a top spot in the Premier League all day, every day. So thank you to Grip 6 for sponsoring today's episode. Now, one more time, let's get back to the Lord Snavington. Do you have an idea, not to put you on the spot here, so if you need a moment, stall for time, that's fine. But do you have an idea like where Mesut Ozil would fit? As in, if there were a club out there that you would like to see him go to that you think could use that number 10 or could use his services and could kind of build around him, is there a team that you think fits with what he would bring to the table?
Let me tell you, Taylor, the United States men's national team.
That's a really good answer. We should probably figure out how that's possible. The answer is it's not, but that'd be great if it were. Let's just change his name and say he's been here the whole time.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
As far as a team that could really,
I can't get over, dude. That is a really good answer. That's where he needs to be. I don't know how we make that work, but yes. Aside from the U.S. national team.
I don't know how to tell you a better answer than that, but a team that really, really needs him and could use him as that number 10 position is Greg Berhalter.
Yep.
And that's just that. I think that if you're looking in the Premier League proper,
mm-hmm.
I obviously think Pep could figure out what to do with him because he just he'll perform some wizardry with his formation and good things will happen. Actually, I think that it would be not a perfect fit, but it would be an interesting, different look for them if he were to go to Liverpool.
Interesting.
It would not be the same Liverpool attack with him in it, but it would be very much a different look, and in an interesting different look in games like what you just saw last week at West Ham, when Liverpool weren't really finding joy through the middle of the field, and they were finding it a little bit. It was West Ham was just defending well, like they were staying compact, they were keeping their lines together, and Liverpool really wasn't finding much joy on the break. And when you need that player that can provide the difference when the game gets a little bit slower, is a valuable trait that I don't really think that Liverpool has a ton of. That would be interesting, to say the least.
All right, I like that one. I think one team that definitely could have used a creative midfielder who could also score some goals would have been Newcastle, but it seems like maybe they filled that spot with Miguel Almiron. So I'm wondering, I know you wrote an article for The Athletic talking about him and talking about that acquisition by them. I'm wondering how you think or where he fits in with Newcastle, and it seems like you're pretty optimistic about that signing. So I find myself waffling back and forth. I'm a little nervous. So I'm wondering if you can reassure me as to why you think that move is good for him and why you think it might work out.
Right. So with Miguel Almiron and at Newcastle specifically, I think that obviously the question is okay, can he produce at this higher level than MLS, which is a fair question, and it is a question that will be answered in the coming months. And that's that's up in the air. I think that he does have the talent to do so. Can he really gel with the system and the players that are around him? That's a question that is a little bit more interesting, because I think that really, and what I explained in my article as well, I think that Miguel Almiron in a lot of ways is the exact player that Rafa Benitez needs for what he has set his team up for as of late. So Rafa Benitez and Newcastle this season in the Premier League, one of the worst goal-scoring records in the league. They have not been scoring enough goals. They just haven't. And that really showed, especially in their home record throughout the first half of the season, just like dismal stuff. I think they only won 2 games. They lost like 6 or 7 or something like that. Beginning of the year, before Almiron has even come into the lineup, Rafa Benitez kind of says, all right, we're shifting things around. We're going to a 5-man back, 4-man midfield with just Solomon Rondon up top. And we have our 2 wingers, which are usually Ayoze Perez and Christian Atsu, who are going to be our attacking threat. The only time that Newcastle is really getting the ball down against better opponents, they're not just slowly working the ball down the field. They are going on these really, really as fast as possible 2- and 3-man counterattacks after stymieing opponents. And then relying on a counterattack to work, or that counterattack to generate a set piece of some sort, and for that set piece to work and to kind of do that. And it's worked even before Miguel Almiron. You have Newcastle beating Manchester City, which shocked everyone, but it was really Newcastle managing to stymie a lot of what makes Manchester City great. You have the speed on the flanks at Newcastle, especially with DeAndre Yedlin, which you can say everything that you want to say about DeAndre Yedlin, but the one thing you can't put against him is that the dude is fast. And they can mitigate Manchester United's speed on the flanks with Leroy Sané, with Raheem Sterling. You can really muddy things up in the middle and prevent guys like Kevin De Bruyne, Ilkay Gundogan, even Sergio Aguero and Gabriel Jesus. You can make it difficult for them. And then after that, hope that your people down at the other end of the field can make something happen or force a mistake. And they forced a really, really bad error out of Fernandinho, which doesn't happen a ton, but they did. And they got the goals that they needed to get, and they pulled out that victory. Miguel Almiron is that player that can run those 2- and 3-man counterattacks. He is lightning quick. He's very, very decisive on the ball. He can take on goals himself, or he can pass up opportunities. I really do think that for what Rafa Benitez has been putting out on the field, Miguel Almiron can handle that. It's the question, obviously, of does he step up to the level, and can he produce anywhere close to the level that he was producing in MLS? Obviously, that's just a question that playing is going to tell us. But system-wise and the type of player that he is, I think Miguel Almiron is a really good fit for Newcastle.
Well, speaking of that system, I really appreciate all the detail and analysis you just brought to that answer. So I'm wondering if there are other teams, maybe aside from some of the ones we've already mentioned, are there some teams that you particularly enjoy because they tend to do interesting things on the field, or because of the changes they make, or just the personnel they have? Are there some of the not lesser known, because everybody knows the teams in the Premier League, but some of the less heralded teams that you enjoy watching?
It's not necessarily a matter of formation things and specific I love all these tactical switches. I do have a couple of teams that are kind of farther down the table, that are out of your traditional, I guess, top 6 it is now teams, that are fun to watch. And one of them, I do have to give a shout out to Wolves. And specifically to Raul Jimenez, Mexican striker. He does so many good things for that team. He's strong in the air. He is somebody that can come back into the midfield and be connecting and combining and creating problems for defenses. I really enjoy watching him. I actually enjoy watching a lot of Leicester City's young talent. I like watching James Maddison work. I am very curious to see what the loan of Yuri Tielemans will bring them, and how they function. I would say Bournemouth, but Bournemouth is kind of now in this pattern of playing really well one game and then just getting smacked in the mouth the next game. For reasons unknown, through the first 10 games of the season, Bournemouth were really, really good, and then they just started having some inexplicable. Oh, it's not inexplicable, I guess. It's a little bit more difficult, I think, when teams are kind of forcing them to be the aggressor more often than I think that Bournemouth struggles. But that 4-0 win over Chelsea was a lot of fun to watch. There was just a lot of good play from out of Bournemouth, good attacking moves. It's fun to see David Brooks work. His haircut was not nearly as bad as that picture that I put up onto the Panic rankings. It was a great game for Joshua King. Not a great game for David Luiz, and that's the way it goes sometimes.
Yep.
But yeah, those are a couple teams that are kind of further down the table that I really enjoy watching.
All right. And I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I wanted to bring it back to the Panic Rankings for a moment, because I'm wondering if there was one player or one coach, or maybe a couple, that you'd like to see join the league for writing purposes, that you think would make it a little bit easier, that would make it more fun. I'm assuming Peter Crouch coming back to the league maybe makes up for Marouane Fellaini leaving, but I'm wondering who else would make your life that much easier to write about.
Can I just talk for a second about how great of I'm so happy that Peter Crouch is back in the Premier League.
You sure can.
And specifically at Burnley, I'm if I am Sean Dyche, or however you pronounce his last name, and I am, I have this relegation struggling team that did really, really well last year and now is not doing well. And I have a team that is known for a lot of time being super inconsistent and struggling to generate offense. Who do I buy? Of course I buy Peter Crouch. I buy the tallest striker I can find and throw him into the box and see if anything happens. And it did. It worked against Southampton. Peter Crouch is the reason that penalty is won. So I'm happy to see Peter Crouch back, both for my writing purposes and just because I like Peter Crouch and I think he's genuinely hilarious. He has by far the best. I'll say the two there's two soccer player Twitter accounts that are like far and away the best soccer player Twitter accounts, and they belong to Peter Crouch and Emily Sonnett of the U.S. Women's National Team and the Portland Thorns. Those are the two best soccer Twitter accounts, just for the record.
Wait, why is Emily Sonnett up there?
Emily Sonnett's hysterical.
Okay.
I don't. If you just go look at her stuff. She like does all these things where she's constantly like cropping Lindsey Horan and Rose Lavelle's faces into weird photos, and she's just a funny person. I don't know what to tell you. She's just a really, really funny like social media presence.
All right, so Peter Crouch and Emily Sonnett. That's good to know. They've got the Twitter profiles. But yeah, what players would you like to see join?
Players I'd like to see join. That would be great for my panic ranking purposes. I mean, like, obviously, if you have somebody like Luis Suarez come back to the Premier League, that's just like a lot of comedy gold waiting for you. And it would definitely make my job easier in a lot of respects, especially if imagine if he came back to a non-Liverpool team and then had to play Liverpool. That would just be like Italian chef kiss. Like that's some grade A material to be working on. Also, I have a very, very prolonged love affair with the Brazilian national team. And even though I know that he is not great at a lot of things, I love my beautiful big beefy boy Paulinho. And
my beautiful big beefy boy Paulinho. Not a sentence I think I've ever heard said out loud.
He is all of those things. And I like writing about him, and I would like to see him. And actually, I think that Paulinho would actually be pretty good in the Premier League too. I think that he would be decent. He could mix some things up. So there's that.
All right, and final one for you: are you excited or apprehensive about writing about Christian Pulisic next season?
Oh, I'm excited. I am very excited to see where this move with Chelsea goes and how it ends up for him. You obviously just yesterday Dortmund dropped the result. It was a crazy game.
Yeah.
But Christian Pulisic did have a very nice goal that he scored in extra time, and it was nice to see. It was something that you haven't seen that much out of Pulisic so far this year. I think that the big thing about Pulisic going to Chelsea and what it means and if he's going to make it or not, and what I've kind of realized over the last month or so as it's occurred is that I think that finally American soccer and the American soccer kind of fandom and whole think tank, all this stuff has come to a place where, yes, we want Christian Pulisic to succeed, but if he doesn't succeed, all is not lost. We don't have, there's not this when Freddie Adu really like faltered, that was a problem for a lot of people. When Josie Altidore had an absolutely like terrible stint at Sunderland, that was like very depressing for a lot of people for what it meant for American soccer. Christian Pulisic going to Chelsea, and if he were not to succeed, that doesn't mean that American soccer isn't succeeding. And I think that now we finally are at a place where like we have enough people at enough different places where we can finally be like, oh, well, at least this person's doing great. If Tyler Adams or if Christian Pulisic doesn't do great at Chelsea, well, Tyler Adams just walked onto a top 4 Bundesliga team and became an instant starter. And if Christian Pulisic's not doing as well as we think he should be doing, Josh Sargent is breaking in with Werder and getting some serious minutes for them and scoring goals. And there's going to be more people. There's already, Alex Mendez is at Freiburg, Sebastian Soto is at Hanover. You have Serginho Dest at Ajax. You have Richie Ledesma at PSV. There's a lot of people right now that I think in the next year or two are going to be making bigger strides than we expect them to be making. And all that to say, I'm excited for Christian Pulisic, and I'm excited to write about him, and it's going to be a good thing. And if he doesn't succeed, I will be sad for him because I want to see him succeed. And as an American soccer fan, I would like to see him succeed. But also I think that we're in the place where not all of our hopes are riding on one or two people anymore, which is ultimately a very, very good thing.
See, I would agree entirely. And I would also say that this is why you want the panic expert on your side, because he knows panic. And he knows how to kind of like disarm panic. And I feel like you just did that. You made me slightly less apprehensive, actually considerably less apprehensive about Christian Pulisic at Chelsea. So thank you for that. Adam, if people want to continue to find you, read you, have you calm them down when necessary, how can they do so?
If you would like to listen to Snavely's meditations on panic and fireside chats of emotional diffusement, you can either subscribe to The Athletic.com and The Athletic Soccer, where it is usually like $3 to $4 a month for a lot of just so much stuff. You have Paul Tenorio breaking exclusive news all the time. You've got people like, all over the place, like Carl Anka, David Omoyole, all these people that are covering different teams in different places. There's team coverage for almost every single MLS team that you can think of. You also have really smart people like the Michael Cayley, Mike Goodman, Joe Lowry. You have knuckleheads like me. There's a lot of good stuff on there. And if you subscribe to the site, you get access to every single sport. So
yeah, you do.
It's a good deal.
It sure
if you
is.
want to follow... What was that?
I said it sure is, yeah. I appreciate it because
sure.
football, hockey coverage is pretty decent. I enjoy that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to follow just me and be selfish with your love, I appreciate that, first and foremost. Second of all, best place to follow me is just go onto my Twitter probably, which is at Snaves, Snaves. My Twitter name is Adam Whitaker Snavely, possibly changing soon to Lord Baron von Snavington. We'll see about that.
That would be fine.
Under consideration.
All right, I appreciate that you'll take that under consideration, and I appreciate you taking as much time as you have to talk to me today. So, Adam, thank you very much for that.
Hey, thank you.